The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, you'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
The High Peak series is sponsored by Gainsborough Cycles, 01427 617 752. For all your cycling needs, this is your one-stop shop located at 20 Ropery Road, Gainsborough, or online at gainsboroughcycles.com. There's a link in the description. Gainsborough Cycles, ask for Trevor Halstead. Welcome back to High Peak again, everybody, for the last time this working week. Now, for this particular episode, I've had to drive up a big hill. It was like trying to climb a mountain pass. You'll see from the intro and the first few bits of this episode what I mean. But when you get there, you're then faced with a nice little hamlet called Cowdale, and then a bit further up the road, a dead-end road that leads to this place, which is kind of in the middle of nowhere, but it's bloody beautiful. Its name is King Sterndale. King Sterndale, Royal Rocky Valley. Rounding off the week in High Peak, we have another pretty unusual parish. This is King Sterndale, which occupies a tract of land south of the A6, just to the east of Buxton. It contains the village of King Sterndale and two small hamlets named Cowdale and Staden. The whole thing has a minuscule population, yet somehow it was here in this parish where one of the UK's leading household names was founded. The village was, and still is, the Derbyshire seat of the Pickford family, the founders of the removal company Pickfords. King Sterndale has some other quirky bits of history. For example, vehicular access to the village is only available from one direction via a road and a piece of land that's only 20 metres wide. The land was created as a result of an enclosure in 1773. The route of the road changed slightly as a result of the church's construction in 1847. The main village also has a butter cross which was restored in 1937. King Sterndale Parish also includes Deepdale, a steep gorge to the southeast, which has a protected nature reserve and is a site of special scientific interest. In the late 19th century, a bear's skull and many Roman artefacts were discovered in Thirst House Cave in Deepdale. We're near Buxton, of course, so quarrying is still a feature of the landscape here. Topley Pike Quarry is a large limestone quarry 200 metres east of the village. It was opened in 1907 by Newton Chambers and is currently operated by Tarmac. Again, it's a varied one, so let's finish this High Peak run off. To start things off, we're driving through the small hamlet of Cowdale between the A6 and King Sterndale village. Getting there is a bit of a game. Cowdale lies on top of a huge hill, and this road, which is extremely narrow, resembles a mountain pass. Once at the top, Cowdale literally has a handful of houses and a farm or two. Not much really, but it's the only way to King Sterndale from the A6. Cowdale was once associated with quarrying. Now there's a surprise. Cowdale Quarry, like many others around here, extracted and processed limestone and did so since the mid-18th century until its closure in 1954. Despite that fact, the quarry did not appear on OS maps until the early 20th century, and a railway link to the quarry first appeared in 1924. Perhaps Cowdale's most notable building is a farmhouse called Cowdale Hall. It dates from 1637 and has the initials EB and AB on a stone within its south wall. Let's move on into King Sterndale now. Getting into King Sterndale you can only do one way. The track from the junction with the Cowdale Road is only 20 metres wide and it's a dead end. This strange setup is down to an act of enclosure in 1773 and was only altered slightly in 1847 when the church was built. We'll see that shortly. The village has a population of around 30 people. King Sterndale is an oasis amid the hills, trapped in a pocket of beauty and tranquility. From within it, you can follow a steep track down into Deepdale, a fascinating dry ravine with precipitous limestone crags, slitherbanks, and a stony-filled valley bottom. The dale contains a cave which has provided evidence of habitation from at least 1,000 years ago. One of the largest caves in Deepdale is 100 yards long but contains a drop after about 20 feet. It's known as Hobbshurst House, where it's thought the mischievous elf or pixie known as Hob lived. Legend has it he supposedly put a spell on a neighbouring spring so that anyone who drank the waters on Good Friday and believed in its virtues were healed of any sickness. Further up Deepdale is a fork where Horseshoedale heads off into the distance. There is a path known as the Priest's Way. Centuries ago, before main roads were laid, the path was a safe route used by the priests of Chelmorton to visit their neighbouring parishes towards Buxton. In the centre of King Sterndale is a little cluster of cottages which make up most of the settlement. One house that stands out above all the others would be King Sterndale Hall. King Sterndale Hall, or the cottage as it's now known, was the home of the Pickford family, who founded Pickfords, the famous firm of carriers. Their connection to King Sterndale began with James Pickford, who came here from Cheshire. Hundreds of wonderful beech trees were planted around King Sterndale by the Pickford family to transform what used to be a bleak and desolate moorland landscape into a more cultured and sheltered parkland. It's all very arboreal now, isn't it? Okay, so we've made it to King Sterndale village, and an interesting route to get here, isn't it? It's a dead end, and that pass, that sort of mountain pass-like road through Cowdale, that's something else, isn't it? I do love a challenge though, and that certainly was a challenge. Certainly wouldn't like to do that when it's snowy and icy. So now we've reached the main village. We've now hit this massive green. This is right at the end of King Sterndale. You can't go any further than this. It turns into a farm track which states quite clearly no access to the A6. Not that you would ever be able to get to the A6 even if you could, because the road would be too steep, I think. But on this green we have the first major landmark, and that is the remains of a cross. Let's talk about this. King Sterndale has a limited number of landmarks, but one you certainly can't miss is this cross. When you see how small the village is in a moment, you'll wonder exactly how or why this thing is even here. Believe it or not, this is a market cross, meaning at some point in the past, this place had an actual market. It's Grade 2 listed and was restored in 1937. It's located on the village green close to an old trackway that would have once crossed the River Wye. It's made of medieval gritstone and is octagonal in shape. Its base is square and it's mounted on 3 stone steps. The cross base has an inscription that records a repair which commemorated the coronation of King George VI. So of course the Pickfords had a vested interest in this place because they lived here, and they did quite a lot of work in and around King Sterndale to make it the nice place it is today. If we head back down this road towards Cowdale, we'll see some evidence of that next. This is the tiny Christ Church, which was built in 1847 and designed by Sir Henry Hawkins. There would be no church here without the efforts of the Pickford family. Thomas Pickford was in residence here in the mid-19th century, and it was his sister-in-law, Ellen Hawkins, who lived at Rockhead House in Cowdale, who set about providing King Sterndale with a church. Her fundraising efforts raised almost £2,000. Amongst the impressive list of subscribers were the Queen Dowager and title contributors led by the Duke of Devonshire, Lady Fitzherbert, and many churchmen and professional gentlemen. A portion of the Pickfords' own parkland was given as a site for this church. The building is early English in style and made of local stone. With seating for 120, it consists of a chancel, a nave, vestries, and a south porch. The Pickford graves lie in 2 rows at the eastern end. Below the central east window lies Frank H. Sloman, who was priest here for only 11 months prior to his untimely death in 1927. There's a couple of members of the Pickford family who are remembered on some wall plaques in here. Here's one of them, in loving memory of the Honourable Dorothy Pickford, OBE. Born in 1881, died in 1971, an unfailing friend. There's also another one, Mary Pickford, who's on this tablet here. Okay, in loving memory of the Honourable Mary Pickford, CBE. MP for North Hammersmith from October 1931 to March 1934. Beloved by all. Is the one for Jordan Pickford in here? King Sterndale is also big enough, apparently, to sustain a small village hall. That's this building. The hall is now part of the old village school and stands across the road from the church. The main room can seat 40 people at tables, 50 theatre style, or 60 for a standing buffet. So, in a nutshell, that's King Sterndale, but there's one final hamlet to have a look at. That would be Staden, and that's located on the edge of Buxton. Let's head there now. Staden is often confused with Staden in Sussex. There's a big difference. This is a small hamlet of just a few buildings lying between Harper Hill and Cowdale. It was occupied in Neolithic, Roman and medieval times. Staden is close to the limestone hilltop of Staden Low, whose summit is 1,204 feet above sea level. Staden Low's prehistoric earthworks are in a field on the western side of Staden Low Hill. They take the form of a slightly raised circular bank with a small adjoining rectangular bank, in itself a unique enclosure feature of British henges. Neolithic artefacts were discovered there during excavations in 1926, and they included a polished stone axe head and many fragments of knapped flint. Further excavations in the 1980s uncovered Neolithic pottery shards and pieces of deer antlers. Those finds are now on display in the Buxton Museum. Now, all of that is well worth talking about, of course, but Staden has another reason for it to be highlighted. Given how small this place is, of course, it's not really known for much. There is a nursery here, and that's as far as I've driven. There you go, Staden Nursery, quality hanging baskets, bedding plants and planters. Unfortunately though, it's closed at the moment, closed to the winter, January, February and March. So at the moment, I can't buy anything from in there. Not that I would anyway, because I'm not that kind of person. I don't really do plants, to be honest with you. It is okay for some people, but not for me, I'm afraid. There is something else here, or there used to be in Staden, which used to attract a lot of people. Let's talk a bit about Archie's farm to finish off. Archie's farm was located on Staden Grange. It was a petting farm, but it's been closed for a while now, and it seems it's not set to reopen anytime soon. Google lists it as permanently closed. The property was last on the market through Timothy A. Brown in 2021, being sold for a guide price of £1.5 million. For that sum, you could snap up a guest house with up to 17 rooms, as well as a 5-bedroomed owner's annex. In addition, it came with a 30-pitch campsite, Archie's petting farm, and a cafe. The property was being sold fully equipped, ready for trade to continue. When it was open, Archie's was a big Buxton attraction. The town itself is seen as kind of an adult-themed tourist attraction, but the farm was quite a popular place to entertain the under-10s. However, I would go so far as to say even the over-10s were just as entertained as the younger members of anyone's family. That's that, folks. King Sterndale brings us to the end of another highly interesting High Peak run. From scaling Mam Tor to learning about limestone, canal building and bottled spring water, this one's thrown up everything. 10 left in High Peak. See you again here soon. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.